Name the market change. It's step 2 of the Counterpart OS flow out of our 8 steps of locking in a distribution partner as an early stage B2B company. Now, today we're going to go through why it's important, where it sits, how to do it, and I'm going to show you with an example from my old business on how it made me more than 8 figures, and an early stage founder as an example on how it's working for them. This is by far the second highest value for the least amount of effort. Where you will get stuck is I'm not worthy, you don't apply a creative license, and you overthink it. All we are talking about today is once you've named your lofty vision, how you build authority is dictating to the market how you see the behavior change as they adopt your transformative solution. Everyone usually gets stuck in the solution, but today we've just got to think about how to name the behavior, because the next session we're going to do is how to build a survey so you can see where your customers are in that behavior, and then how to use that to qualify customers in the sales process and allow them to qualify themselves without you pushing product at them. Now, this works particularly well if they're aware but they don't know what their solutions are, or if they're unaware and they don't even know if they have a problem. So if you're pitch slapping them in that process, it really unlocks them too. So it's not just an opportunity that gives you a partnership deal. It's something that can greatly enhance your B2B process because it fundamentally improves your sophistication about how you think the market will look and change. That same effect works on a partner. If you can name your market transformation, they're going to find you way more compelling to work with, even though you may be younger, earlier, completely unconventional. And the reason is, if you understand how the market functions, they're going to feel safer for bringing you in front of their enterprise customers because you have a perspective that has context of everyone else and you're just not trying to push your product. And so if you want to really understand where this sits, a good way of thinking about it is just engagement of customers when they're trying something new or trying something bold or trying something transformational. They sort of go on this step here that you can see on these yellow stopping points. We don't know what we need, then we don't know where we need to go, then we don't know how or where to start, and then finally we don't want to do it alone. It's the 4 stages of basic change that every organization and individual goes through. No one really wants to change alone. If they do want to change, they don't know where to start. Before they even know where to start, they've got to know where they're actually heading. And if they don't even know what they need, they've got to understand the uncomfortable truth of why they have to act now. And so in our first session in step 1, we took you through a market with an anti-theory and the need to hear a vision. Today, what we're going to take you through is how to label the stages so you know what stages you're in, and then the survey that sits a part of those stages so a customer can self-assess on your first or second call. That unlocks a superpower for you, because if a customer makes their own assessment that they want to head towards your lofty vision, they identify where they are in the stages of transformation that you have. The next question is, do I want to change now? And if so, how do I change? And that's when you hit them with a we do it with you offer. So it unlocks deals and the deals process. So we're right here today, and that's what we're trying to solve. Customers, we want to answer their question of, we don't know how and where to start, but we now know we have a problem and we have the same vision. So we're going to run at that challenge today because it's going to improve your sophistication. That sophistication on how that market's going to move is going to attract that distribution partner. So why do we need to solve this problem? It's not just you need to solve it because you need a distribution partner. You need to solve it to actually validate that you're a visionary. So in our last call, we effectively had a lofty vision. This is you putting your vision into action and not just using a lofty vision to push a product. This is how you see the market changing, where it's currently at status quo and where it could move to. Lofty goal, lofty change, lofty reformation. And to be a visionary, you can't just define today's pain. You have to define tomorrow's normal. And by defining tomorrow's normal, you can force large organizations and individuals within them to act, partner with you, or buy at a much bigger deal from you in order to help them support that transformation versus just use your solution. To make it real though, it'll also get you from selling pilots. Selling pilots can be a really bad thing, especially if you're working on a new market, reforming an old market, or your solution requires workflow change or behavior change from the end user. In enterprise, it's really tricky to sell a product in those three areas because it requires buy-in and it requires energy and it requires people to not only just take a risk on your solution, but also actually use it properly. And working in a dysfunctional organization that doesn't want to change, it's really hard to make that happen. I stumbled upon this after I thought I had a huge deal, but then I wasted a shitload of time. So one of my first enterprise deals was with Bank of America. I had about 12 meetings. It was about 7 flights to Charlotte. I got a 50K pilot, um, and in 22 months, they churned. I was shocked, but I also wasn't. 12 meetings was a lot. 7 flights was a lot to use something that they signed up to my website for. So when that SVP of procurement signed up to my website, I thought I was like, bang, we were like 7 people in our first shitty office. We thought we were onto something golden. And, some of the things that stood out to me as why it was a good deal is we had an executive champion being the SVP of procurement, who reached out to us because they had a huge need in reskilling. 2, they had a startup and pilot lab. So we thought, hey, there's obviously a clear off-ramp for pilots. So let's go for it. And last but not least, the sales process had goals at every step. They had a plan to buy. They showed us how to work with them to buy. So we thought, this is sophisticated. They know how to work with unconventional companies. Unfortunately, 22 months later, they churned. They barely used the platform. No one really signed in. And we only made 50K. So we probably lost 45 grand just in flights and labor around the selling motion, not including anything else. So we thought something had to change. We can't keep running these long deal cycles for short-term pilots when we're trying to get a whole market to change from experience in hiring to potential. It just didn't add up. There was something really big that was holding back those individuals. Now, what we know it is vanity. Large organizations treat their workforce like commodity, and most people understand value and subjective value of a hire based off experience. Experience that's rarely ever translated to skills. So it's pretty much a vanity issue when you get around it through networking. For our reason we existed solving underemployment, we couldn't just make that process better. We wanted potential to matter over experience. So we took a different approach. The first thing we did is we added a lofty vision. So we went right out and said, we're not just going to help you reskill or build a software developer or hire one veteran. We said we want the whole world to move to potential over experience because we would like to solve underemployment. That is much bolder than how we engaged with Bank of America. 2, rather than running a sales process where we demonstrated the platform, we ran a workshop process. So we showed them, we tested them, we allowed them to understand how the data would work for them as individuals. We did a workforce report on talent that we had that could fill the jobs that they had to open. And we also built them a skill framework so they could move from experiential hiring and internal movement on reputation to a skill framework and skills-based hiring and skills-based talent mobility. That lowered a significant amount of risk for them before they've even started. And last but not least, we built an irresistible offer. We wanted to build an offer that provided so much value that it'd be crazy not to change, as well as make the deal large enough that they would take it seriously. And finally, we said we do it with them. And so we built you had to spend more than $1 million with us offer, and we'll come and help you do it. We'll help you put in a squad. We'll help you test people and look at the results. And so we sort of stumbled upon this process, and then we realized it was something called collaborative selling. But you can see here, the Department of National Defense in Canada, it was 5 hours for the purchase, just 5 hours of meetings, one face-to-face meeting. We had an operational executive that had a talent problem versus a initiatives or innovations procurement person trying to make something happen. It was a 10-week sales cycle. Our first purchase was 1.8 million, and our 6-month upsell was 6.8 million. We got a 3-year contract, and we got a referral to another Canadian government customer, being Public Health Canada. So as you can see, the difference is way less meetings and way more revenue. Plus, it being for a lot longer. Valuation through the roof. So we started to ask ourselves, why did this work? Well, the key was becoming a trusted advisor before pushing a solution. Becoming a trusted advisor reinforces your visionary position and actually makes it accurate. The 3 parts about becoming a trusted advisor were pretty interesting. The first one was establish safety for experiments with a lofty vision. If you don't actually call out the uncomfortable truths and the anti-theory and call out the lofty vision, people don't feel safe enough to do something new. That's your job. Your job is to encourage the market to transform. If you don't have a lofty vision, you're just starting from a standing start, and you're probably going to fuck it up. The second thing was, every sales meeting, we treated it as a learning process versus a sales process. We went there with the idea of, we want to teach them something new about how to get towards solving underemployment, or something new about hiring on potential versus experience. And so we designed our process around magic learning moments or unexpected learning jolts based off our platform or insights for them that made sense. And last but not least, why it really worked, and it's why I'm going to take you through today, is that if a customer wants to head in your lofty vision direction, and they also want to address the uncomfortable truth and act on it, and it's time for them to change, the easiest way to build extreme trust is allow them to self-assess their own maturity in adopting the new normal or the new behavior required to reach that transformation. If they understand the maturity of their transformation, they'll know what to do next. Being that navigator and compass for a customer to do that without using your solution makes you extremely valuable, because it drastically reinforces your visionary position and builds trust. And so what we're going to do is going to take you through the 6 steps of naming that market transformation and turning it into a survey. Because if you do this and you survey your customers in an insights meeting and provide them insights while you're doing it, you are way more valuable than someone running a 57-minute demo. It also makes you extremely valuable and gives you an artifact to bring into partnership conversations where they're like, well, where do you see the market going? Well, we see the market changing, your customers changing across these 4 stages for this lofty goal because of this uncomfortable truth. And not only do we say that, we have a way of allowing your customers self-assess. All of a sudden, you've hooked these fuckers in. This is a huge deal because you're putting learning about the transformation before selling your product. To make this come alive for those that are tracking my With You With Me journey from the first video, I want you to look at our customer 4 stages of transformation, which we turned into a survey right now. And you can see here up the top, we have a huge transformational behavior change. So we name it. We say we want to go from experience to potential when it comes to hiring and talent movement. big shift, but we're calling it right out. So if you believe in our lofty vision, we're going to say, hey, this is where it is now. This is where it needs to get to. And so then we'd ask a really simple question: what does skill-based hiring look like for a CTO? CTO being our ideal customer. And we said, look, there are 4 stages of transformation that a CTO goes through. They start with recruiter mode. Then they move to framework mode. Then they move to squads mode. And last but not least, they get to super team mode. And so if you're going through that transformation, the first thing that we're going to answer in recruiter mode is, I know what is holding us back. And so you say, you don't realize the gold mine that you're sitting on. If you had people's aptitude testing results, you could match internal staff and those in your candidate pool or candidate tool or applicant tracking system to your open jobs now, as well as upskill them for roles tomorrow. Seeing that data and that potential of that data by testing them at an individual level can get them from, I've never thought about this way. I can see not having this data is holding us back. And then all of a sudden they go from just being stuck in, I need to recruit more to, oh, I need a framework to make this happen, to make it scalable, to make my organization be able to take risks. Because nearly all of our job descriptions are completely weighted on experience. So we say, look, you know, what we find and why we call this framework mode is that we want to be able to match the right people to the right job to the right level, even if they don't have experience. And so if they don't have experience, we need some sort of framework to do that. So we use a skill-based framework. If you're working with us, we would provide you that framework. So here is a skill-based framework. You could buy it from Tom, and having that skill-based framework now aligns you to skill level to job role within your internal system. Once you do that for a customer, I go, I can see the steps of making this work. If a software developer at level 5 requires these 5 skills at this level, I now don't need experience. I just need to test for those skills or test for someone's ability to learn from them, then train them. And so they go, okay, well, I understand that now I have a framework. I can make this, potential skill-based hiring happen. But I don't really want to do it alone. Most of my organization hires based off experience. It's a lot of reputation to get this done. It's too much risk. And so when you deal with a customer like this, is why don't we take the risk for you? And so what we did is we would say, hey, we could give you a team of people that we've pre-trained for your organization. We can hire them, which allows you to turn them off if they don't work for you, and we called this squads. So the next stage from a customer from framework mode was hiring skills-based talent from an outsourcing provider. Because if it doesn't work, it's a very short experiment. But if it does work, I've now not only proven that I can hire skills-based talent, I can build a whole team and capability from skills-based talent, which could provide an engine 2 scenario to my engine 1, which is experience. And so at this stage, one of our customers realized, well, I've now seen wins and everything's getting easier. I can put this across my whole organization. And so what we would help a customer do is move from job descriptions to team descriptions and talent mobility matching the right person for the right team that has the skills or the ability to learn the skills at any time, all done decentralized, and therefore it does it on its own. It's scaled effortlessly. So we would call this super team mode. It took a long time to get customers here. It was pretty quick to get customers to framework and then squads mode. Squads to super team was a huge transformation because large organizations are heavily weighted on experience and not skills. So these are the 4 stages that we would take customers through. We would say, hey, it sounds like you're really interested in this potential over experience approach. Do you want to see where you're at? Because it's really, really important that we take the least amount of risk as possible in helping you get there. And so we would ask 6 questions that would allow someone to figure out if they were in recruiter mode, framework mode, squads mode, super team mode. Okay, so where we left off was the With You With Me survey. How did I turn what was on the left into a survey that I could then ask customers' questions. Now, I knew none of my customers were in super team mode. So I only built my survey to validate box 1, 2, and 3, recruiter mode, framework mode, squads mode. And by doing so, I've created 7 questions where I now have an answer, and the words are either really, really simple, or they're like no, or they're used in a language that at the time our customers were using. And how we would do this on a call is we would say, hey, let's figure out where you are on 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And the reason we did that is people would always want to buy our enterprise pricing, but all the other reasons that we've already covered on this video. And so we wanted to avoid that. We wanted to own the transformation. So we would go, is your team open-minded enough for a skills-based approach? 1, 2, 3. We would ask the customer, are you 1? Are you 2? Are you 3? We have that on one slide. We just show you that 1. They'd be like, we're a 1. Are you sure? Yeah, we're sure. What about you, John? What about you, Sarah? Are you sure? Yep, we're all a 1. Okay. And we would go down through that guided practice model until we got an answer for each box. In this case, they've answered mostly 2s. So we would say, look, you've got mostly 2s. It sounds like you're in framework mode. You know the recruitment model isn't working for you, but you don't have a way of adopting a skills-based approach. Does that sound right? Yes. Okay. Well, do you want to get to a skills-based approach? And they'd be like, we do. Okay. Well, what we're going to do for you is we're going to create you a framework. We're going to build you a skills framework. Is that something you'd be interested in? Great. Here is our skills framework in 7-day offer. Pause. That's how we would connect all of this together for a direct sale. If we were doing it for a partner, we would go, hey, they would say something like, how do you think the market's changing? Well, we would say, hey, look, as we move from experience to potential as it comes to talent, mobility, and recruitment, we think there's 4 stages that companies go through. They start in recruiter mode, they move to framework mode, they move to squad mode, then they move to super team mode. And then we would describe what happens in each stage and then what was unlocking. And to do this systematically for your customers, we can run them through a survey like this. And this is how we deliver it. All of a sudden, to either that direct sale or partner, my sophistication on how I see the market transforming is skyrocketing, as well as our credibility. And we're not pushing any product. That opens the door for people to say, well, can you work with these other vendors we may have already procured? It's a good thing because you don't want to be in a competitor race to zero, especially in transformation world. And for partners, they might already have a way they're thinking about it or a service that they offer, so they're starting to think joint offer, which is good news. Now, if we bring this back to our example, you can see with D&D, they purchased 1.8 million. They already had a skill framework. They just needed squads. They needed more and more skill-based squads. The great thing working about the Defense Force is they had a skill framework. So when they did our assessment, they scored a lot of 3s. Awesome. Bank of America would have scored a lot of 1s. They had the right ambition, but they were still in recruiter mode. So we should have given them our try before you buy offer. But we didn't and got stuck in pilot world. But with D&D, we gave them our we do it for you offer. Our we do it with you offer. They spent 1.8 million because that's what they were ready to do. They were ready to scale and integrate, and then very quickly went to an enterprise solution 6 months later once they got to super team mode. We actually launched the super team feature with this customer globally. So by naming the transformation, turning it into steps, having an offer for each step, and then building a survey for a customer success, we drastically increase trust, own the market narrative, own the change, and help a customer discover. All of those things enforce our sophistication and credibility and can get you an outcome like D&D and avoid an outcome like Bank of America. So how do you do it? In the next video, I'm going to take you through how to do it in terms of 6 steps that you need to do to build that survey. And I'm going to walk you through an example of a company called Curiously. Thanks for your time. Okay, now we're into the juicy stuff. The 6 steps to create your own transformation survey and for you to own and name the transformation your customers are going to as they approach your lofty vision. There are 6 steps. You can see them right on our screen. I'm going to quickly go through them, and then I'm going to use an example of one of our early stage startups to bring it to life so that you can apply it to yours. The first stage is a from to shift. It is always important for you to define the status quo from to the visionary impossible goal. Owning that is key. We want to get from experience to potential. It's a big shift. You have to own that space. Number 2, we then want to name the hook. So what does potential or skill-based hiring look like for your company? It's a memorable name. Skill-based hiring. Some other examples. Empowered literacy for your school. Limitless belonging for your school or company. Whatever it is, it works. It has to be original, clear, memorable, and repeatable. The maturity journey. Those 4 stages across the top, they're always going to match our customer stages of transformation. So for aware, then experimentation, adoption, then scale and integrate, and then transformation, which are the 4 base stages. We want to come up with our own name that are contextual to the behavior being observed at each stage. For mine, as you can see, we had recruiter mode, framework mode, squads mode, super team mode. They were super unique because we had a really strong status quo. But even if you don't have a strong status quo, unique is best as long as it describes the behavior and what they're asking for. The next are the 4 traits that define the process through those stages. Things like incentive, access, leadership focus, available tools, anything that you can do to observe your stakeholder or for them to self-assess and observe their own behavior that stands out and acts as an identifier for the stage that they're in. These are contextual to your environment, but they almost always have a culture focus, leadership focus, tool focus, framework focus, group behavior, individual behavior focus, or the skill itself. The maturity survey. So that takes the framework into a simple diagnostic tool so customers can locate themselves. And then finally, some case studies at each stage, either on the dream outcome or the problem definition, so that you can talk customers through. I.e., we find that customers moving from framework stage to squad stage get really stuck unless we find a team leader that also believes in potential over experience. Do you have a team leader that is already thinking that way that we can trial this framework with? Those types of data insights on customers that you've been successful with or you've observed where the most success could occur are then added to your talk track to the survey. We're going to go through 1 to 5, and then step 6 we'll do in our next session where we teach you how to integrate this survey into the sales process. Okay, so let's start with Curiously. This is Curiously's lofty vision. So we have an impossible goal. Universities are powered by aligned true interests. We have a anti-theory. True interest and deep presence can occur in initial dialogue between student and professors. Effectively, they're avoiding each other. They don't need to. It can go even bolder and create an even new relationship. And last but not least, we get to a co-building dialogue that's formed in undergrad that enhances in student outcomes and all outcomes. So a co-building dialogue between students and professors enhances all outcomes for a college. Curiously's application is an application that allows any college professor to build a vector data database and then set up any agent on top of it. So I can take all of my research, all of our knowledge, and give it to a student. Now, students don't use consulting time to actually go deeper on their true interest. They use most of their consulting time to help them pass an assessment. And why wouldn't they? With Curiously, we're trying to change that from avoiding each other to co-building. If we get a better dialogue of aligned true interest between professors and their undergrad students, we have a better college experience and higher completion rates. That's what Allison's technology exists to create. So we can see here, we're going to name the movement, avoiding to co-building. Avoiding is the status quo. Co-building is our almost impossible goal. It's a good framework to use. We're then going to name the hook, align true interest. We've pulled it right out from our vision statement. It is a bold term that we've defined, aligned true interest. What the hell is aligned true interest? Well, let's talk about it. It is a great catchy. It's almost like skills-based hiring. You've heard a little bit about it. You've heard something similar, and it's a little bit memorable. Then we're going to map each stage of the maturity journey. So we start in avoiding mode, then people reveal, then they start sharing, and then they co-build. And it sort of fits our frame really, really nicely. As a part of naming that maturity journey, we're going to go through the process and describe what behavior is going on between our players and at the organization. So you can see here, it's pretty simple. Student and professors maintain peace and avoid each other. Does that sound like you? Revealing mode. Students and professors are sharing their true interests and attempting alternate dialogue models that aren't just your traditional, hey, pass your exam chats. Sharing mode. Students and professors share their true interests before dialogue via tools and knowledge base, so they have deeper, more robust discussions. Effectively, technology is introduced to spark debate and share knowledge before you even talk around your true interests. And then last but not least, students and professors align their true interests to learning and research outcomes at the same time. So people are working on projects together whilst they're learning together. That is our creative license. When you build this, you will probably have to create this last future. Don't be afraid to. This is the clarity of where you'd like the behavior to get to achieve your lofty, impossible goal and the market movement itself. And then after that, we get to the trickier parts. So we now have to go through and name all of the things that contribute to this behavior happening or are within their environment that can tell us what stage this school is at by acting as an observable signal. So we have true interest as a skill. We have value of co-creation in research at the school. Is it important in the culture to have co-creation in research between students and professors? Are the incentives aligned between students and professors to talk outside of the exams or assignments? Is it accessible? Do we actually have a knowledge base and tools that actually allow for better conversation? In onboarding, in the culture of onboarding, do we actually onboard them to a common dialogue or a new dialogue? And last but not least, do we care about student success and student relationships? We picked those for Allison because they cross leadership, they cross multifunction, they cross the toolkit, they cross the incentives that sit underneath it, and they also cross our core topic, which is true interest itself. You know, is it actually a focus? Is it of interest? And is it clear? So if we were to, take this down and say, well, where are you really where are you really at as an organization? And we say, look, as you perform research, is there really a co-creation model between students and your academic professors or your professors? In the first stage, in avoiding mode, there is a wall between research and learning. It's a really, really clear answer. In the second stage, where there is some dialogue and sharing true interests, there's extra curriculum in the subject that provides research skills. So professors are trying to build researchers. And there's some discovery tools provided to students to, as you learn this subject, here's you could take it. And that's a good indicator that we're starting to head to revealing mode. We're revealing that you need research skills and we're revealing you could go further. And we're trying to find out your true interests and make it a little bit accessible. In sharing mode, professors are rewarded to discover a student's interest in consultation hours and have actually identified them. Because if they do have aligned true interests to research projects, they're going to launch a capstone where they're integrated. So we're integrating our undergrad students into a research project and we're making that the focus of a call or a meeting or a time that a student can go to. So we're probably in sharing mode. We're really starting to share. This is where our research is headed. I now understand your true interest. I think there's some alignment. And here is some, subject credit to actually competing and participating in one of our research projects. And last but not least, we then have like co-building mode. Students undertake a self-discovery project right at the start of a subject and asked to contribute to research projects. So right at the start, you're asked to contribute as soon as you sign up to that subject and you do onboarding, and it's part of the onboarding. Professors invite students to share goals and capstones to support research. So rather than just trying to shoot it when it happens, it's now part of the actual learning for the course, with a discovery onboarding tool, be asked to contribute to a research project with clear connection and matching, and consultation for goals, as well as direct capstones provided to support actual research outcomes for that professor. So 4 very different stages as they evolve from avoiding to co-building. So we have to do those 1, 2, 3, 4 trait descriptors on how we would observe the behavior of an organization for this trait at each stage for all the traits we've identified. Now that might seem like a lot of work, but by doing that, we've very quickly also built a survey with a little bit of messing around. So now that we've got our traits, we now can take this over to our maturity assessment template, which you can get in our guide. And if you go over, we can now see that question. So this is the question that's referencing the trait on how do you think, are the incentives between students and professors aligned for completing a research project? Now, we haven't asked it that way because everyone will probably think, there's a wrong answer to this. So I'm just going to try to answer as in probably like at a really stubborn fashion or a really, visionary. We actually do this. We know you're looking for this answer to say that we actually do believe in both of them and we should do something about it. We don't want that to happen. So we want to change the question so it's not as loaded and not as directed. And so it feels a little bit more comfortable and safe. So rather than asking directly about incentives, we ask a simple subjective qualitative question. Do you think there is value contributing to faculty research? Do you think there is value in students contributing to faculty research? Number 1, we are focusing on class completion. For that reason, we have a clear wall between the two. So that is really, really close to this on purpose because we have pulled this box into this one, but we've removed the loading so that if that's the case, then that's a good answer for you. Number 2, we allocate time to train research skills in our coursework. You'll notice again, extra curriculum to help research provided. They're in revealing mode. Great, that's number 2. And as we go down to number 3, our subjects have integrated research projects. You can see number 3, our subject has an integrated research project. It's not up to the student to decide, but it's a good step in the right direction. And then number 4, we have direct research capstones that are accessible to all students which contribute directly to research. We have connected the dots between research capstones that contribute to credit and things that lead, those capstones leading directly to research that our professors are undertaking. Okay, and we're now in this last box here, co-building mode. And that's how we build a question. So every time we bring this across, we take one trait, turn that into a question, so it's not loaded and not biased as best we can, and then list out from left to right, left being 1, furthest right being 4, where they're at. And then so for our customers, we now have a simple maturity system, rudimentary diagnostic that allows you to go, okay, you're mostly 3s, so you are in sharing mode. Thank God. Now, if you get to the end of this, and when you are giving this assessment, and we'll do more on this when we do our sales meetings and show you how to, facilitate, articulate, run this type of process. And people are sort of all over the shop, and they don't give you like a mostly 2s. There's no easy majority, or they're all 1s or they're all 4s. I would say at first inspection, if they're everywhere, and you've got a gut feeling on where you think they're at based off how they've answered, I would go back to the questions that you think are really off in terms of how they're answered and just ask them again. Not in a accusatory way. Just like, I feel like something's off. Do you think we've got this right? And could you give me an example of why you think that is? And I think you'll find that nearly all of those sort of extreme, where everywhere answers go from being very scattered to then very constrained, and you'll get your answer. Second tip, If that's still happening after you do that process, you probably haven't got the traits the right way or the segmentation, right? So all the sort of maturity stages. So go back and review it again and then test it out on more people until you feel like you get it right. This is one of those things where it's a little bit bold. If you facilitate it the right way, you can't fuck it up. Facilitating the right way is running it as a guided practice where you're involved in the activity. It's informal, and it's one question at a time, and it's interactive. Where it could go really wrong is if you let them do it self-paced, or you take an authoritarian sort of tone as you go through it. Don't laugh. People do it sometimes, especially when they're tired. So if you avoid all of those things, you'll be able to keep refining this until you solve problem number 2, and it'll stop being scattergood. The last step is just to create a simple data story for each of these boxes. And what do I mean by that? All I mean, and when I say boxes, I actually mean these four. So all I mean is a customer at avoiding mode is generally hampered by this type of situation, a very clear specific scenario that only happens in avoiding mode. For each of those scenarios, for example, for my one up here, companies caught in recruiting mode, we find that they've spent a lot of money on recruiters, they try to outsource it, but the job's time to fill just keeps increasing for their core functions. And that time to fill is generally above 90 days. So they've tried everything and they're still above 90 days. No matter how much money they throw at the problem, that's where they're at. And so I go, does that sound like you? All of a sudden we have a data story. Great. Okay, well, if that does sound like you, the next dream outcome is like, how do you know you're not sitting on a gold mine already? So we would get you to do our testing. Why don't you do our testing and we can give you an insight report so you can find hidden talent in the organization you've got for your open roles. It's a good way of looking at the problem without expending a lot of resources, and you can do it complete for free on our platform. Would you like that? On the other side of the spectrum, you know, we find that customers moving from, squads to super team mode are really, really identifying that they're moving to a team-based organization versus a function or a head of organization. And they're really struggling to get productivity gains. They've got some teams that are completely skill-based, other teams that aren't. They can't figure out why some projects are successful that others aren't, even though the skill levels are sort of there. And now they wanted to sort of make it completely driven by the individuals or driven by the teams. And if you sound like you're in one of those problems, what you'll find is that you've probably done a lot of hiring and a lot of upskilling. And with the same skill level, you've got projects going really, really well, and some projects going really, really poorly. And in some cases, one project going well with one team, getting a different project and it not going as well. That doesn't mean your skills-based hiring approach is wrong. It means we're not assessing team fit based off problem severity. Some people are good at turnaround problems. Some people are good at growth problems. Some people are good at absolute startup problems. And if you don't get that fit right, regardless of skills, you won't get the productivity improvements. Does that sound like you? Okay, well, what we find is that matching people to team requires everyone being tested. So here is our enterprise solution. It does it on its own and allows you to offer team descriptions versus job descriptions. So they're two data stories that I can use to explain what each situation is. So once you've finished your survey, go back through and create, are you this type? Is this what it feels like? Very specific pain point. Then you're probably at this stage. It's a very simple data story with a bit of context. It gets better and better as you do it more. That allows the customer to go, you really understand this stuff, and I can tell you've worked with a few people. Sometimes less is more. The more specific, the better. The more that you can pinpoint it faster, or the more that you can suggest the pinpoint, the greater the result. That is how you build a transformational survey. A finished example is in the guide. I hope it's been helpful. If you use this correctly, it'll help you acquire partners because you'll come across as sophisticated when they ask you that question. Where do you see the market going, and where do you think our customers are stuck? And it'll help you acquire more direct customers like our good friends D&D here by getting them to buy the right solution that gets them to the next stage of transformation versus buying an idea and just testing it out. You want to avoid this and get this. This stage, this step 2, is the first part of getting this right. in a direct sales process. The next step in our 8-figure deal process is about becoming a trusted advisor. So we're going to tell you how to take your lofty vision and take this transformational survey and run a set of 3 meetings that you can make for repeatable customer acquisition in B2B enterprise that puts all of this together, saves you a lot of time, and drastically increases your deal size while keeping you in position as a visionary. Good luck in getting your survey done. Jump into the guide for more questions and have a look at the finished example if you get stuck. Thank you for the session today.